When Sandra Bullock heard her name and his voice, everything around her stopped. The crowd, the lights, the cameras, the noise of the awards ceremony, all of it faded for a moment. It was just his voice, warm, gentle, familiar, the kind of voice that could calm a storm inside anyone. And in that instant, she felt something she had not allowed herself to feel for years, something she had buried deep. She felt seen. She felt remembered. But that moment did not happen on a stage or in front of cameras. It happened in a quiet hallway behind the scenes, where no one was watching, where their worlds touched in silence. To understand that moment, we must go back to the beginning of this story. It was a rainy afternoon in Los Angeles when Sandra first heard the news. Keanu Reeves had agreed to appear at the same charity event she would be attending. This event was not like the glamorous award shows. It was a quiet fundraiser for children who had lost their parents, the kind of cause that both of them supported quietly, without publicity, without cameras. They both believed kindness did not need applause. Sandra sat in her car before going inside. The rain hit the windshield softly. She took a deep breath. She told herself it was just another event, just professional, just polite smiles and handshakes. But deep inside, her heart moved in ways she did not fully understand. Time had passed, lives had changed, careers had taken different paths, but something inside her remembered him, remembered the way he laughed, remembered the way he listened, remembered how safe she felt around him. Keanu arrived quietly. He did not want attention. He wore simple clothes, no expensive suit, no loud entrance, just him, humble, gentle, just Keanu. People around him whispered. They always did. He was loved for the roles he played, but deeply respected for the man he was. Polite to everyone, kind without effort, carrying a quiet sadness that many felt but did not mention. The kind of sadness that comes from loving deeply and losing deeply. Sandra walked through the entrance and stopped when she saw him. He did not see her at first. He was speaking to an older woman, holding her hand as she told him about her grandson. He listened as if she was the only person in the world. His kindness was not a performance. It was real. When his eyes lifted and met hers, there was no shock, no surprise, only softness, like he had known she would be there, like a silent understanding had always been between them. They did not rush toward each other. There was no dramatic moment. It was gentle, slow, familiar. "Hi, Sandra," he said, his voice warm. And that is when her eyes shined, not because she was in love, not because she was overwhelmed, but because in his voice, she felt something rare. She felt safe. The event continued. They spoke in small moments between speeches and presentations, laughing at memories from years ago, sharing quiet looks that said what words could not. But there was something unspoken between them, something both were afraid to touch, a truth that had lived for years in silence. That as the night was ending, Keanu asked softly, "Can we talk? Somewhere quieter?" Sandra nodded. They walked to a hallway away from everyone. The sound of rain outside returned. The world was silent again. And this is where the story truly begins. The hallway was quiet. Only the soft sound of rain outside filled the space between them. Sandra leaned gently against the wall, her hands folded, trying to steady her breathing. Keanu stood a few steps away, not too close, not too far, just enough to show he respected her space. He always did that. He always respected the space someone needed to breathe. "How have you been?" she asked softly. Keanu smiled, but it was not a smile of complete peace. It was the kind of smile that held stories, memories, and pain that had never been spoken aloud. "I've been okay," he answered. "Some days are quiet. Some days are heavy, but I'm moving, slowly." Sandra nodded. She understood that kind of answer. She had lived it too. The world saw her as strong, always glowing, always confident. But real life was not always like that. Sometimes strength was quiet. Sometimes strength was simply surviving the day. "I heard about your loss," she said carefully, gently. "I'm sorry, Keanu." His eyes softened. He looked away for a moment. "Grief never leaves quickly. It lives in the bones." "Thank you," he replied. His voice was calm, but there was weight in it. "I'm learning to live with memories instead of presents. It is a strange thing." Sandra did not speak. She knew silence was sometimes the greatest comfort. No words could fix what the heart still held. Finally, he looked back at her, and there was something new in his expression. Something real, vulnerable, open. But tonight, he said, seeing you, it felt like breathing again. Her heart moved in her chest, not in a romantic rush, but in something deeper. Recognition, connection. The kind the world does not give often. She laughed gently, looking down. I didn't think you would recognize me from across the room, she said, trying to lighten the moment, though her voice was soft. Keanu shook his head slowly. Sandra, I could recognize you in a crowded stadium, in a dark room, in a dream. Some people don't fade. They stay. Those words hit her harder than expected. She felt tears rise behind her eyes, but she did not let them fall. Not yet. For a moment, they stood there, and time moved slower, as if the world wanted them to speak truths they had avoided for years. Do you ever think about the past? She asked. Keanu took a deep breath, every now and then, but not with regret, just wondering how different life could have been if I had been braver. His voice broke just a little on that last word. Braver. That was the hidden word between them. Years ago, they had felt something. Everyone had seen it. Their laughter, their closeness, the way they looked at each other. But they were young. The world was loud. They were both scared of losing something they cherished. Sometimes love is not lost because people do not feel it. Sometimes it is lost because they feel it too much and are afraid of its power. I was scared too, Sandra whispered. I was scared of losing what we had. Scared of changing something that was already good. Keanu stepped closer, slowly, gently, carefully. And look at us now, he said softly. We lost it anyway. The words were not angry. They were not accusing. They were just true. Sandra's eyes filled, and this time, one tear fell. Keanu reached out, but he did not touch her. His hand hovered, giving her the choice. After a moment, she placed her hand in his. Their fingers intertwined, familiar, like they had always known how to fit. And then, from somewhere behind them, footsteps echoed. Someone was coming. Everything between them could change in that next moment. Asterisk. The footsteps grew closer. Sandra and Keanu instinctively released each other's hands, though the warmth of that brief touch lingered between them like a secret. A staff member appeared at the end of the hallway, carrying a tray of water bottles, not noticing anything unusual. But the moment had already changed. Something fragile and precious had opened between them. We should go back soon, Sandra whispered, her voice steady, but her heart trembling. Keanu nodded, though his eyes held something unfinished. Yeah, but not yet. They walked a little farther down the hallway, where a small door led to a courtyard outside. The rain had lessened to a soft drizzle. The air smelled like wet pavement and fresh leaves. They stepped outside together, the cool air brushing over them like a quiet blessing. The lights from the event hall glowed behind them, but here they were unseen. Just two souls standing under the night sky. Sandra wrapped her arms around herself. Do you ever feel like we are living two different lives? The one the world sees, and the one inside us? Keanu looked up at the sky as if searching for answers in the clouds. Every day, he said, the world sees what it wants. But inside, there are things quieter, more complicated. She nodded. She knew exactly what he meant. For a moment, they stood there without speaking. Silence was not empty. It was full of all the words they had never said. Finally, Keanu looked at her with an expression that held both courage and fear. Sandra, can I tell you something honestly? Her heart tightened. Yes, please. He took a slow breath, as if gathering something fragile inside him. I never stopped caring about you, he said. Not for a single year. Not for a single moment. The words hit her like rain on dry earth. Unexpected, necessary healing. Sandra felt her breath catch. She had prepared herself for casual memories, polite emotions, gentle friendship. But not this. Not honesty. Honesty was dangerous. Honesty changed things. Keanu. She whispered, but her voice shook. He stepped closer, but his movements were gentle, respectful. You don't have to say it back. I only wanted you to know. Not to ask for anything. Not to change anything. Just to be honest. Finally, Sandra looked down at the ground, her tears mixing with the raindrops. I never stopped caring either, she admitted softly. I just didn't know if I was allowed to. He blinked, confusion touching his eyes. Allowed. She nodded, her chest tight. We were young. We were scared. We both had careers rising fast. There were expectations, pressure, people who thought they knew what was best for us. And then time kept moving. I thought, maybe it was too late. Keanu shook his head slowly. Time doesn't decide everything. Sometimes feelings wait. She laughed softly, through her tears. And what are we supposed to do now? As soon as she asked the question, the door behind them opened again. Voices spilled out. Laughter. The event was ending. They were being called back to the world again. Keanu exhaled slowly. We do what we can. We take one step at a time. But something had shifted. Completely. As they walked back inside, people noticed something different about them. They couldn't explain it, but they felt it. A softness, a warmth, a quiet electricity. And then, the moment that made every camera turn. The host on stage, smiling brightly, called out for Sandra to present the final donation check. As she walked forward, Keanu stepped aside to let her pass, and he said her name. Softly. Carefully. Full of something the world had forgotten how to name, Sandra. She turned her head, and in that second, her eyes shined, and the whole room saw it. The room fell silent, though no one could explain why. The charity event continued. The lights glowed softly, and the audience smiled politely. But there was a shift in the air. People felt something, even if they didn't understand it. It was in the way Sandra paused when she heard her name in his voice. It was in the way her eyes softened, glimmering like the rain still falling outside. It was in the way Keanu looked at her, not as a co-star, not as a friend, but as someone who had once known the shape of her heart. Sandra stepped forward to the microphone, her voice calm, steady, and gentle. She spoke about loss, about love, about hope. Her words were simple, but they carried weight. She talked about how life can take things away but still leave room for light. She talked about how kindness could rebuild even the most broken pieces of a person. And behind her, Keanu listened, truly listened, as if every word she said was a piece of something they had both lived. When she finished, the crowd clapped warmly. It was not loud applause. It was grateful, heartfelt. After the event, people began to leave. Cameras flashed. Journalists whispered. But Sandra and Keanu did not rush out. They stood near the back of the hall, talking quietly. There was no need for big movements. Everything important was happening in the small details, in their eyes, in their pauses, in their breaths. Can I walk you to your car? Keanu asked softly. Sandra nodded. Outside, the rain had finally stopped. The sidewalks glowed under the streetlights, and the world felt calm. They walked slowly, side by side. Neither of them spoke for a moment. The silence was warm, not empty. You were really brave tonight, Keanu said quietly. Your speech, it came from somewhere deep. I think, Sandra replied, her voice low. I was speaking to you too. He stopped walking. She stopped beside him. The night felt very still. Keanu looked at her, his expression open. I know, he said. I heard it. Sandra took a small breath. Something inside her was pushing forward, something she had kept silent for so long. I have to ask you something, she said, and I need you to answer honestly. Keanu nodded. I will. She looked directly into his eyes. Why didn't you ever say something back then? Why didn't we ever talk about what we felt? Keanu's expression shifted. Pain, regret, honesty, all at once. Because I was afraid of breaking something beautiful, he said. I didn't want to be the reason you lost peace, or lost career opportunities, or lost who you were. Sandra's voice softened. I was afraid too, but we lost something anyway. He nodded slowly. Yes, we did. Then, his voice lowered, quieter, unsure. Do you think there's still something here between us? Her heart beat faster. She did not rush the answer. She looked up at him, really looked, and she saw not the actor the world loved, but the man who had carried grief, kindness, patience, and loyalty in his chest for years. I think, she said slowly, that something never truly left. Keanu exhaled, like he had been holding that breath for years. But before either of them could say more, a voice called out from behind them, Sandra. Keanu, wait. They turned. A young assistant rushed toward them, holding a phone. This is urgent, she said. Breathless. You need to see this. She turned the screen toward them. A picture of Sandra and Keanu in the hallway. Their hands intertwined. Posted. Shared. Already. Spreading across the internet. The headline beneath it read, "Are they back together?" Their private moment was no longer private. Everything was about to change. The world moved fast, faster than either of them expected. By the time Sandra and Keanu reached their cars, notifications were already flooding both their phones. Fans were talking. Journalists were asking questions. Headlines were multiplying every second. The internet had turned a quiet, private moment into something loud and exposed. Sandra stared at the photo on the assistant's phone. It was simple, just two hands touching, gentle, familiar. But the world did not see gentleness. The world saw a story, a rumor, an answer to questions the public had been asking for decades. Keanu looked at Sandra carefully, watching how her breath slowed, how her shoulders tensed, how her eyes softened, but did not panic. She had lived through the spotlight for years. She understood how quickly things could twist. "Are you okay?" he asked. She nodded, though her voice was quiet. "I will be. I don't want them to make something ugly out of something that was honest." Keanu stepped closer, but again, he kept just enough distance to respect her space. "We can handle this, together or separately. Whatever you want." She looked up at him, and for the first time that night, she smiled. Small, tired, but real. "I don't want to run away from this," she said. "Not anymore." Keanu nodded slowly. "Then we won't." The assistant hesitated. "They're already asking for statements," she said. "Interviews, comments, clarifications." Keanu sighed softly. "Let them ask. We don't owe them anything tonight." Sandra agreed. "Tonight, we just breathe." The assistant left, giving them space once more. They reached Sandra's car. She opened the door, but before stepping inside, she turned back to him. "Keanu," she said softly, "can we talk again tomorrow? Without cameras, without noise." He smiled, and that smile was different from earlier. Lighter, hopeful. "Yes." "Name the place." She thought for a moment, remembering a place from long ago. "Do you remember the little cafe near the lake? The one where we used to sit after filming?" Keanu's eyes warmed. "The one with the old piano in the corner?" She nodded. "Meet me there. Tomorrow morning, early, before the world wakes. I'll be there." She got in her car and drove away. Keanu stood for a moment longer, watching the lights fade down the street. His chest felt full of fear, full of hope, full of something he had kept quiet for too long. That night, the internet exploded. Social media lit up with videos, old interview clips, memories from the past, stories people believed they understood. Some cheered, some speculated, some joked, but none of them knew the truth of that hallway. None of them knew the weight of the years, the silence, the waiting. Sandra sat by her window in her home later that night, wrapped in a blanket. The city lights glowed outside, and the world felt heavy and soft at the same time. She thought of the way he said her name, the way his eyes held hers, the way time did not erase certain connections, no matter how long they slept. She thought about how love does not always look like fire. Sometimes it looks like patience. Sometimes it looks like two hearts quietly orbiting each other, waiting for the right moment to meet again. Keanu sat on his floor at home, legs crossed, hands resting quietly. He closed his eyes. He thought of her voice, her laughter, the tear that had fallen when she spoke the truth. He felt a warmth spread through him, cautious, tender, but real. The night was long, but they both found rest eventually, because tomorrow they would face something real. Together. The morning was quiet. The sky was soft and pale, as if the world itself was trying to speak gently. The small cafe near the lake had just opened. The chairs were still being arranged. The smell of fresh bread and warm coffee filled the air. It was the kind of place where time slowed down, where heavy things became lighter. Sandra arrived first. She wore a simple coat, her hair tied back loosely. She looked like herself, not the actress the world watched, but the woman who had lived, learned, and healed. She walked inside and chose the table by the window, the same one they used to sit at years ago. The memory of those days moved through her quietly. She waited. A few minutes later, Keanu walked in. He looked the same way he always did, quiet, thoughtful, kind without trying. When he saw her, his expression softened. Not surprised, not nervous, just home. He sat across from her. No rush, no pressure, no performance. You came, she said softly. Of course, he replied. They sat for a moment, their hands resting on the table, close but not touching. They could hear the lake outside, hear birds moving, hear the world breathing slowly. I was thinking all night, Sandra said gently, about everything, about us, about how we always danced around what we felt. Keanu's eyes lowered for a moment. I know, I did it too. I told myself I was protecting something. Maybe I was just afraid of losing something I never even let myself have. Sandra nodded. I think we both were. They shared a quiet smile, gentle, honest. But now, she continued, I don't want to hide from what we feel. Not from the world. Not from ourselves. Not anymore. Keanu breathed slowly, like something heavy was lifting from his heart. I don't want to hide either, he said. But we have to be careful, patient, steady. The world loves to talk. We can't let them shape what this becomes. I agree, she said. Whatever happens next, we choose it, not the headlines. Keanu reached out his hand, slowly, giving her time. Sandra did not hesitate this time. She placed her hand in his. It was warm, familiar, grounding. For a long moment, they just sat like that, two hands resting together, holding years of silence, years of feelings that never disappeared. So, Sandra asked softly, a small playful smile touching her lips, what do we do now? Keanu laughed quietly, the kind of laugh that came from deep inside, from relief, from peace. We start small, he said. Coffee, walks, real conversations. We learn each other again. We don't rush. We don't force. We just let it grow. Sandra nodded. Slow love. Real love. Yes, he said. The kind that doesn't need to be loud to be true. They talked for hours. They talked about their past, about what scared them, about what healed them, about what they dreamed of now. There were no dramatic confessions, no promises sealed with certainty, just gentle truth, spoken slowly and honestly. Outside, the lake shimmered softly in the morning light. When they finally stood to leave, Keanu walked beside her. No cameras, to no crowd, no spotlight. Just a people who found each other again. The world would talk, guess, assume, and create their own stories. But the real story lived in quiet places, in the hallway, in the rain, in the cafe by the lake. And it would continue from here, not with noise, but with love that was patient, steady, and chosen.